She expected to die when the black SUV jumped the curb. Rough hands shoved her into the leather-back seat, her broken body screaming in agony. But the ruthless crime boss didn't pull a gun. Instead, he stared at her bruised, heavy frame and quietly asked, "Who broke your ribs?" The freezing Chicago rain felt like needles against Madeline's skin, but it was nothing compared to the white-hot agony radiating from her right side. Every breath was a shallow, jagged gasp. Every step on the cracked pavement of West Randolph Street sent tremors of blinding adrenaline through her chest. She was a big woman, heavily built and soft-curved. For most of her 32 years, Madeline's weight had made her feel entirely invisible to the world, but to Assistant District Attorney Bradley Lawson, her size had been a weapon to use against her. Who's going to believe a fat, clumsy accountant over a respected prosecutor? He had sneered just 3 hours ago, right before he kicked her repeatedly in the ribs with his steel-toed boots. They'll just think you fell down the stairs, Maddie, like the heavy, stupid cow you are. She clutched her sodden wool coat tighter around her, tasting blood and rain on her split lip. Bradley had beaten her because she had found the offshore accounts. She had seen the millions of dollars he was funneling out of the police evidence lockups and pinning on her accounting firm, specifically on her credentials. She was the perfect scapegoat. And tonight, Bradley had intended to silence her permanently, leaving her broken on her living room floor while he went to fetch his cleanup crew. She had barely managed to crawl out the fire escape before he returned. Now she was walking blindly into the night, knowing she was a dead woman. Bradley had the cops in his pocket. She couldn't go to a hospital. They would call him. Suddenly, the roar of a high-performance engine cut through the rhythmic drumming of the storm. Headlights blinded her as 2 matte black Mercedes G-Wagons swerved violently, boxing her in against the wet brick wall of an abandoned storefront. Madeline froze, her heart hammering against her fractured ribs. "Bradley found me," she thought, closing her eyes in sheer terror. "This is it." 4 men in tailored dark suits stepped out into the downpour. They didn't look like cops. They moved with a terrifying, silent synchronization. Before Madeline could even force a scream from her bruised throat, massive hands clamped onto her arms. The pain in her side flared so violently her knees buckled. "Careful," a deep, rough voice barked over the rain. "If you kill her before he speaks to her, he'll have your heads." They hauled her heavy frame up with effortless, terrifying strength and shoved her into the spacious back seat of the lead SUV. The doors slammed shut, cutting off the howl of the storm. The sudden warmth of the vehicle's interior, smelling of rich leather, expensive tobacco, and a faint trace of gunpowder enveloped her. Madeline huddled into the corner of the plush seat, trembling uncontrollably, her arms wrapped protectively around her torso. She forced her eyes open, expecting to see Bradley's smug, cruel face. Instead, she was looking at Gabriel Moretti. The air in the car seemed to turn to ice. Everyone in Chicago knew that name, though few ever survived seeing the man's face. He was the undisputed head of the Moretti Syndicate, a shadow empire that controlled the city's ports, unions, and a vast underground network of illicit trade. Gabriel sat opposite her, an imposing, broad-shouldered silhouette in the dim ambient light of the luxury SUV. He wore a charcoal bespoke suit that looked entirely dry despite the storm outside. His dark hair was immaculately styled, and his eyes, a striking, cold amber, were locked onto her with the intensity of a predator studying its trapped prey. Madeline stopped breathing. Bradley was laundering Gabriel Moretti's money, and Bradley had pinned the missing $3 million on her. Gabriel was here to execute the thief. "I didn't take it," Madeline choked out, the words tearing at her throat. She tried to shrink back into the leather, deeply conscious of how much space her body took up, waiting for the disgust to flash across the mobster's face, waiting for the bullet. "I swear to God, Mr. Moretti, I didn't take your money." Gabriel didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't signal the massive, scarred man sitting in the driver's seat. He simply continued to stare at her. His gaze tracked the way she was hunched over, the unnatural shallowness of her panicked breathing, and the dark, violent bruising blooming rapidly across the left side of her jaw and neck. He leaned forward slightly, the leather creaking under his weight. There was no disgust in his amber eyes, only a cold, terrifying calculation. "I know you didn't take my money, Madeline," Gabriel said. His voice was shockingly smooth, a low baritone that vibrated in the tight confines of the car. Madeline blinked, rain dripping from her matted hair into her eyes. You know?" Gabriel reached into his breast pocket and produced a pristine white linen handkerchief. To her utter shock, he extended his arm and gently pressed it against her bleeding eyebrow. Madeline flinched violently, but his grip on the cloth was unwavering, surprisingly gentle. "A woman who successfully steals $3 million from my family does not live in a mouldering walk-up in Pilsen," Gabriel said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. "She does not buy her work shoes at discount outlets, and she certainly does not cry over the cost of her mother's insulin. I know exactly who you are, Madeline Hayes." Madeline was paralyzed, too stunned by his proximity and his knowledge of her pathetic, struggling life to even process the fear. "You're breathing wrong," Gabriel observed, withdrawing the bloodied handkerchief. His gaze drifted down to where her arms were wrapped tightly around her thick waist. "And you flinched when Carmine loaded you into the car. Your posture is defensive, asymmetric." He leaned in closer. The sheer, oppressive aura of danger rolling off him was suffocating, yet his voice dropped to a murmur that was entirely devoid of threat toward her. "Who broke your ribs?" he asked quietly. Madeline stared at him. "What?" "I am a man who deals in violence, Madeline," Gabriel said, his tone turning dangerously soft. "I know what a shattered ribcage looks like. I know what domestic terror looks like. I asked you a question. Who did this to you?" A sob caught in Madeline's throat. Nobody had ever looked at her like this, not with pity, not with revulsion at her heavy frame, but with a cold, absolute demand for the truth. "Bradley," she whispered, the name tasting like ash in her mouth. "Bradley Lawson." A muscle feathered in Gabriel's jaw. The amber eyes darkened to pitch black. "Carmine," Gabriel commanded, not looking away from Madeline. "Boss?" the driver grunted. "Call Dr. Elias. Tell him to prep the trauma suite at the estate," Gabriel ordered, his gaze locked on Madeline's tear-streaked face. "And tell the cleaners to locate ADA Lawson. Don't kill him. Just watch him. He belongs to me now." As the G-Wagon accelerated into the night, Gabriel took off his bespoke suit jacket and draped it over Madeline's shivering, soaked shoulders. "Breathe shallow, Madeline," he murmured, sitting back in the shadows. "You are under my protection now, and the man who did this to you is going to beg for a death I will not give him." Madeline drifted in and out of consciousness, her mind a fragmented reel of pain, the smell of antiseptic, and the low, authoritative timbre of Gabriel Moretti's voice. When she finally opened her eyes with a degree of clarity, she wasn't in a hospital, and she certainly wasn't in a mobster's dungeon. She was lying in the center of a massive king-sized bed, in a room that looked like it belonged in an architectural digest. High, vaulted ceilings, heavy velvet drapes drawn against the morning sun, and a crackling fireplace that filled the room with a deep, comforting warmth. She shifted, and a sharp hiss escaped her lips. "Don't try to sit up," a gentle voice instructed. Madeline turned her head. A slender, older man with wire-rimmed glasses was sitting in an armchair near the bed, tapping on an iPad. "I'm Dr. Elias," the man said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "You are at Mr. Moretti's private estate in Lake Forest. You suffered 3 fractured ribs on your right side, a hairline fracture to your left cheekbone, deep tissue contusions, and moderate hypothermia. I've wrapped your ribs and started you on a course of strong anti-inflammatories and painkillers. You need strict bed rest." Madeline stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. "Why am I here?" she rasped. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "Because I require a living, breathing accountant, not a corpse." The heavy mahogany door clicked shut. Gabriel Moretti stood at the foot of the bed. He had changed out of the suit from the night before, now wearing a black cashmere turtleneck and dark trousers that somehow made him look even broader, even more dangerous. Dr. Elias immediately stood, gave Gabriel a respectful nod, and quietly exited the room, leaving Madeline entirely alone with the head of the Chicago underworld. Gabriel walked slowly toward the side of the bed. Madeline instinctively pulled the heavy silk duvet up to her chin, acutely aware of her vulnerability. Beneath the blankets, she was wearing an oversized silk button-down shirt that certainly wasn't hers. It draped over her large breasts and thick waist. She felt her cheeks burn with a deep, familiar shame. "My housekeeper Rosa changed you," Gabriel stated flatly, instantly reading the panic in her eyes. "No one else saw you." "Why did you bring me here?" Madeline asked, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound brave. "You said you knew I didn't steal the money. So why do you care if Bradley killed me? I'm nobody. I'm just a fat, ugly bookkeeper he used as a front." Gabriel's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. He pulled a chair to the side of the bed and sat down. His posture relaxed but coiled, like a panther at rest. "Do not insult yourself in my presence," Gabriel said, his voice quiet but laced with an undeniable edge of authority. "I deal with liars, thieves, and murderers all day, Madeline. The one thing I do not tolerate is a false narrative. You are an exceptionally brilliant forensic accountant. You found a $3 million leak in a laundering system that my own men couldn't detect for 6 months. You are not nobody." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, bringing his face dangerously close to hers. "And as for your appearance," he continued, his amber eyes scanning her face, pausing on the dark purple bruise painting her cheek. "I do not care about the superficial metrics of a society obsessed with starvation. I look at you, Madeline, and I see a woman who took a beating from a 200-pound man, crawled out of a window with 3 broken ribs, and kept walking in the freezing rain to survive. That is strength. I value strength." Madeline swallowed hard. She didn't know how to process this. For 3 years, Bradley had ground her self-esteem into dust, making her feel lucky that a handsome, successful ADA would even look at a plus-size woman like her. He had convinced her she was burdensome, repulsive, and stupid. Yet here was the most feared man in the Midwest, looking at her with a terrifying, piercing respect. "Bradley framed me," she whispered, a tear finally escaping and tracking down her bruised cheek. "He used my login at the firm to authorize the transfers to a shell company in the Caymans. When I found the discrepancies yesterday, I confronted him. I thought it was a mistake." But he laughed. He told me that if I went to the police, the paper trail led straight to me, and if I went to you— He told you I would butcher you. Gabriel finished the sentence for her. Madeline nodded slowly. Then he hit me. He said he was going to make it look like a home invasion. That the mob got to me. Gabriel let out a slow, measured breath. He reached out, his large, calloused hand hovering for a fraction of a second before his knuckles gently brushed the tear from her unbruised cheek. The touch sent a jolt of electricity straight to Madeline's core. Bradley Lawson made a critical error, Gabriel said softly. He believed that because he held a badge, he could steal from my family. But his fatal error was believing that I am a man who acts blindly on paperwork. Gabriel stood up, towering over the bed. He walked toward the window and pulled back the heavy drape just a fraction, looking out over the sprawling, snow-dusted grounds of the estate. For 2 weeks, I have had my men watching you, Madeline. I watched your routine. I watched you buy day-old pastries for the homeless man outside your office. I watched you sit in your car and cry before going into your apartment, because you knew the monster waiting inside. Gabriel turned his head to look at her over his shoulder. I knew you were innocent before you ever found the ledger. I was waiting for the right moment to pull you out. Madeline's breath hitched. You were watching me. I protect my investments, Gabriel said, turning fully back to her. And right now, Madeline, you are the key to bringing down a corruption ring inside the district attorney's office that spans 3 states. Lawson is just a foot soldier in a much larger political machine that is trying to bleed my organization dry. I need you to dismantle their financial network. I need your mind. And if I do? She asked, clutching the duvet. What happens to me? Gabriel walked back to the bed. He didn't sit down this time. He loomed over her, a dark guardian angel smelling of violence and expensive cologne. If you do this for me, Gabriel stated, his voice a low, vibrating promise, you will never have to look over your shoulder again. You will have wealth, you will have a new identity if you wish, and you will have my personal protection. No man will ever raise a hand to you again, Madeline. The next time Bradley Lawson sees you, he will be on his knees. Madeline stared into his amber eyes. She was terrified of him. Yes, he was a criminal, a killer. But as she lay in his bed, wrapped in his silk shirt, her broken ribs securely bandaged, she realized an unsettling truth. She had never felt safer in her entire life. Okay, Madeline whispered, her voice finding a sudden, solid strength she didn't know she possessed. I'll burn his whole world down. Gabriel Moretti smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful thing. Rest, mea cara, he murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips for a fraction of a second before he turned toward the door. We go to war tomorrow. Over the next 48 hours, Madeline transformed Gabriel's mahogany-paneled library into a sprawling command center. Armed with a heavily encrypted Lenovo ThinkPad and secure access to the offshore J.P. Morgan Chase portals, she hunted. Her ribs ached fiercely with every deep breath, heavily taped beneath the soft, oversized cashmere sweaters Rosa provided. Yet for the first time in her life, her physical pain was entirely eclipsed by a burning, absolute focus. She was no longer the frightened, heavy-set woman cowering in a cramped apartment. She was a weapon. Gabriel was a constant, silent presence. He would sit in the corner of the vast library, sipping dark espresso, simply watching her work. He never rushed her. He ordered meals from exclusive Chicago restaurants like Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse, ensuring she ate well. When she hesitated, deeply self-conscious about eating rich food in front of him, Gabriel had simply placed a thick cut of prime rib and a baked potato on her desk. "Fuel the brilliant mind, Madeline," he commanded softly. "You have absolutely nothing to apologize for in this house. Your beautiful body survived a monster. Honor it." His unexpected words sent a powerful heat flooding through her chest. By midnight on the third day, she found the fatal anomaly in the banking data. "It is not just a simple laundering scheme," Madeline whispered, her fingers flying across the illuminated keyboard. Gabriel instantly materialized behind her chair, his intoxicating scent of sandalwood and danger washing over her tense shoulders. "Show me the evidence," he murmured, leaning over her shoulder. His broad chest lightly brushed against her back, making her pulse spike dramatically. "Bradley wasn't acting alone. He was siphoning your funds, yes. But he wasn't keeping them," she explained, pointing to a labyrinth of shell companies on the bright screen. "He funneled the $3 million into a blind trust managed by Vanguard. I traced the routing numbers. The trust belongs to Judge Harrison." Gabriel's body went completely rigid. Judge Harrison was the federal judge overseeing the massive RICO case against the Moretti Syndicate's key lieutenants. "Bradley is bribing a federal judge with your own stolen money," Madeline concluded, looking up at his sharp jawline. "He is buying a conviction against your men and padding his own political resume for a run at the mayor's office. He used my credentials at the firm to make it look like I was the one moving the money." A dark, terrifying laugh rumbled deep in Gabriel's chest. "He is using my own gold to build my gallows. Highly ambitious." He looked down at Madeline, his amber eyes blazing with a mixture of intense fury and deep admiration. "You unraveled a massive federal conspiracy in 3 days. You are magnificent, Madeline." She blushed furiously, looking down at her lap. "So what do we do now?" "Now we let Bradley think he has won," Gabriel said, smiling dangerously. "Tomorrow night is the annual Law Enforcement Charity Gala at the Drake Hotel. Bradley will be there, celebrating his impending victory. We are going to attend." Madeline's eyes widened in sheer panic. "I cannot go there. Bradley will kill me on sight, and I do not exactly blend in at high society galas." She gestured helplessly to her heavy frame. "I will be a laughing stock." Gabriel gently grasped her chin, forcing her to look up into his fierce, unyielding gaze. "You are walking into that ballroom securely on my right arm. You will be the most powerful woman in that room, because you hold their absolute destruction in your hands. Leave the wardrobe to Rosa. You just focus on the final data transfer." The sheer conviction in his voice shattered her lifelong insecurities. For 32 years, society had told her to shrink, to hide her fat body in dark corners and apologize for taking up space. But Gabriel Moretti was demanding she stand in the absolute center of the light. He was offering her a glorious crown forged in pure vengeance. "Okay," Madeline breathed, her voice finally steadying completely. "I will do it. I will need a secure flash drive and a direct wireless connection to the hotel's internal audiovisual network. Carmine will provide whatever you need," Gabriel promised, his thumb gently stroking her unbruised cheekbone. "Tomorrow, Chicago will learn exactly what happens when they underestimate Madeline Hayes." The grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel was a massive sea of glittering chandeliers, expensive champagne, and Chicago's corrupt elite. Bradley Lawson stood proudly near the magnificent ice sculpture, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, holding a crystal glass of dark bourbon. He felt entirely invincible. With Madeline presumed dead at the bottom of the icy Chicago River by his hired thugs, The money trail was permanently severed. His political ascension was guaranteed. Then the heavy oak doors of the ballroom swung open violently. The string quartet abruptly stopped playing their instruments. The low hum of wealthy chatter died instantly, replaced by a suffocating, terrified silence. Gabriel Moretti stepped into the room. He wore a midnight blue tuxedo that radiated pure, lethal power. Two of his most heavily armed enforcers flanked the entrance, barring the massive doors from the inside. But it was the woman, securely holding Gabriel's arm, that made Bradley drop his bourbon glass. It shattered violently against the polished marble floor. Madeline walked into the ballroom, her head held extremely high. Rosa had truly worked a miracle. Madeline wore a custom-draped emerald green silk gown that clung beautifully to her deep curves and flared elegantly around her heavy hips. The rich color highlighted her porcelain skin and the fiery determination in her eyes. Her dark hair was swept up in a sophisticated twist, and a staggering diamond necklace rested heavily against her soft collarbones. She did not look like a victim. She looked like a majestic queen of the criminal underworld. Bradley's smug face drained of all color. He took a stumbling step backward. "Maddie?" he choked out, completely ignoring the terrified whispers of the prominent judges and corrupt politicians surrounding him. "You are supposed to be dead." "Dead?" Madeline supplied calmly, her voice ringing out clearly across the absolutely silent ballroom. She unlinked her arm from Gabriel's side and stepped forward boldly, the expensive silk of her elegant gown whispering softly against the marble floor. "You did not hit me hard enough, Bradley, and you certainly did not hide your digital footprints well enough." Gabriel stood motionless behind her, a silent, imposing shadow, allowing her to claim her absolute vengeance fully. "Arrest him!" Bradley suddenly screamed loudly, gesturing wildly to the off-duty police captains standing frozen in the room. "He is a ruthless mob boss. She is a thief. Arrest them both right now." Nobody moved a single inch. The sheer, overwhelming terror that Gabriel Moretti effortlessly commanded kept every shiny badge in the large room firmly pinned to their cowardly chests. Madeline pulled a sleek silver remote from her velvet clutch. "Before anyone makes a career-ending mistake, you should all look at the screens." She pressed the button. The massive projector screens behind the grand stage, meant for the charity presentation, flared to vibrant life. Suddenly, the banking records, offshore routing numbers, and encrypted emails between Bradley Lawson and Judge Harrison were displayed in massive, undeniable high definition. Every illegal transfer, every single bribe, every stolen cent was laid completely bare for the entire law enforcement community to witness. Loud gasps echoed rapidly through the grand room. Judge Harrison fainted, collapsing into a large table of fancy hors d'oeuvres. Bradley fell to his knees, his hands trembling violently as he stared blankly at the bright screens. His entire life, his career, his freedom, all of it incinerated in a matter of mere seconds. "No," he whimpered pitifully, hot tears streaming down his flushed face. "Please, Maddie, I am deeply sorry. I was desperate. Please do not do this to me." Madeline looked down at the pathetic man who had viciously beaten her, belittled her size, and tried to maliciously murder her in cold blood. She felt no pity. She felt only the cold, hard steel of her newly forged spine. "My name is Madeline Hayes," she said softly. But the expensive microphone on the stage picked up the live feed, echoing her confident voice throughout the grand hall. "And you are nothing but a pathetic, corrupt coward." Gabriel stepped up beside her, his large hand gently settling on the small of her back. The physical contact sent a jolt of pure fire through her veins. He looked down at the weeping prosecutor, with eyes as cold as a frozen grave. "The FBI has already received the unredacted files, Lawson," Gabriel announced, his deep voice carrying the heavy weight of a death sentence. "You will go to federal prison, and you will pray every single day that the guards keep you in solitary confinement. Because if you ever enter the general population, my friends will be waiting for you." Gabriel turned away from the trembling man, wrapping his strong arm securely around Madeline's waist. He pulled her flush against his solid side, completely unbothered by the hundreds of terrified eyes watching their every move. "You did beautifully, Mia Cara," he murmured in her ear, his breath hot against her neck. "Are you ready to go home?" Madeline looked up into his amber eyes. She was a heavy-set accountant, and he was the most dangerous crime lord in the city. But as she leaned into his warm embrace, she finally realized that true power was not about the size of your body. It was about the incredible strength of your survival. "Yes," Madeline smiled brightly, leaving Bradley sobbing on the floor. "Take me home." Did Madeline's revenge give you chills? If you loved this intense Mafia romance and want to hear more thrilling, dramatic stories of power, betrayal, and unexpected love, smash that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with your fellow romance lovers and drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in Madeline's shoes. See you in the next video.